Our next guest is a former Navy SEAL and a congressman from Texas. He's also the New York Times bestselling author of a brand new book called Fortitude: American Resilience in the Era of Outrage. It's a fantastic book. Congressman Dan Crenshaw, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
You bet. Congressman, I want to just tell you, I've downloaded an Audible. I've got it here in hard copy, and I don't know if you can see it, but I mean, I have dog-eared so many pages and passages from this because I think every chapter is just such a fascinating read, both in terms of your life, the challenges, but also the lessons that people can learn about where we are in society. And so the thing that I wanted to start with is you talk a lot about cancel culture and safe spaces and how students are being coddled right now. Do you think that the generation that's coming out of college right now is prepared for the future based on this idea of how everything needs to be safe and their feelings are hurt by what they read and hear versus the experiences they have?
Oh, I'll try to give it an optimistic answer. So I am not responsible for the research on cancel culture and the coddling of on that goes on in America. I reference a lot of great work in that field. My book is about solutions to that problem. I don't dissect the problem as much. But here's what we've learned from the research that has taken place. It's mostly coastal elite institutions where this problem is most pervasive. It's much less likely to occur in other campuses, but it's increasing, and like that we can know for sure. It's certainly increasing. I think the vast majority of college students are still more worried about getting through their next exam and dating and what party they're going to next. That's what I hope, and that they're willing to work hard and move up a trajectory of a career trajectory just like everybody else. But there's enough of these sort of postmodern thinkers, the critical theorists, critical race theorists, critical gender theorists out there creating enough waves that we should be worried. And where we thought this would be confined to the campuses, it has now been let loose into the real world. That's where you're seeing corporations cave to the outrage mob and to the cancel culture. You're seeing our sports be completely desecrated by this cancel culture. And it's out there, and we have to talk about it in real terms. Real liberals and conservatives have to unite against this.
Yeah. One of the lessons that I was really fascinated by was how you handled the Saturday Night Live Pete Davidson issue where he had mocked your service and sacrifice to this country. Everything in me, Congressman, when that happened, wanted you to go after him, everything. And so I was so interested to see how you wrote about this. You talk about how you resisted that urge and that you wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt and reflect upon what he had said. Tell us about why you did that. I love how you explain this in the book.
Yeah, well, that chapter is about shame, and it's showing the right sense of shame. And so I use that as a pretty good example because there was obviously, maybe it didn't seem so obvious at the time, obviously space for some kind of different interpretation of intent, and as there always is in any given confrontation. And what you're describing is what a lot of people felt like. Go get him. This is it. But that wasn't what I felt. And so I couldn't, first of all, I couldn't react to something differently than how I actually felt. Now, I'm a little bit different than most people. I come from the SEAL teams. We have extremely thick skin. We're used to this kind of mocking and behavior. But there's a logical sense of shame that we can use to shame others and also use to react to being shamed. And this is where our society is getting it really out of balance. We're at the extreme ends of shame instead of having the nuanced conversations in the middle. And what I mean by that is, the outrage mob seeks to shame no matter what, to play the aggrieved victim and to make somebody bow down to them. And as a result, public figures either do one of two things. They bow down completely and unnecessarily, even if they didn't do that much wrong, or they don't apologize at all, right? And so, no wrongdoing whatsoever. Both are bad. And what I talk about in that chapter is the need to find the nuanced middle ground where you could be a little bit wrong, misspeak a little bit, but be forgiven for it. Some kind of redemption in our society might be nice. And that would incentivize people to maybe apologize more also when they actually do something wrong.
You know, you talk about that
Yeah.
too, how victimhood shouldn't be a cover for crimes. And we've seen that a lot lately with rioters and looters. How do you turn that conversation around so people still feel like they're being treated justly?
Well, we just need to define justice. The problem with the current movement is that it redefines justice. Justice has a definition. It means it's a question of whether people's rights to life, liberty, and property are being infringed upon. It's a question of due process being properly adhered to. Now, in some cases, it's not. In some cases, there's not equality of reciprocity between police and citizens. Just the way conservatives and libertarians would often complain, there's not a reciprocity of equality between government regulators and businesses trying to get a permit or build something, right? And that permit getting denied for no apparent reason. So these are rational explanations of injustice. But what these movements do instead is make justice about power. That's what it's really about for them. It's about group on group identity politics and power over another. And it's retributional justice as opposed to a rational definition of justice. That's the actual conversation we have to have. But unfortunately, emotions reign supreme on this particular issue.
Congressman, Nancy Pelosi called U.S. law enforcement agents stormtroopers. She called the Attorney General a blob. When we come back, I want to continue our conversation with you and get your take on this. Stay with us. All right, we're back with Congressman and best-selling author of the new book, Fortitude, Dan Crenshaw. Congressman, I'd love to get your thoughts on how Nancy Pelosi has referred to folks. She just tweeted this: unidentified stormtroopers, unmarked cars, kidnapping protesters, causing severe injuries in response to graffiti. These are not the actions of Democratic Republic rather, at HHS, DHS Gov's. Actions in Portland undermine its mission. Trump and his stormtroopers must be stopped. Now, do you think that's appropriate? Because I know I read in the book, you talk about people should smile, have humor, defuse stuff. But in this case, is that the appropriate response, or should we fight back and say, Speaker Pelosi, this is wrong the way you're describing these folks?
Oh, no. I mean, of course we fight back against untruths. I don't think my book teaches a different lesson than that. Listen, when you have to hurl insults and labels on people, it's a good indication that your intellectual position is rather weak. And in this case, Pelosi is quite literally making things up. Hundreds of officers have been injured by these rioters, these violent mobs, these violent Antifa mobs, which Democrats just can't for the life of them find it in their hearts to condemn them. Federal agents have been blinded by these high-power lasers. IEDs have been created and thrown. Explosions have taken place. Commercial fireworks have been used. These are not the kind of fireworks that you and I can just go buy. So there's something underlying this Antifa movement, and I find it very interesting that Democrats can't condemn it. They really can't. Why? Why is that? Because what's becoming apparent is that the Democratic Party is now the political wing of this movement. So there's a political wing, there's a militant wing, but their messaging coincides rather well. And it's basically this: we'll hold America hostage until you give us power. And Pelosi is saying this. She says this is only really happening because Trump is in power. If we were in power, then it would stop happening. And the protesters, or these violent mobs, and they mix the two, right? Now there's a difference between protesting and this, but what Andy does very well is they mix the two brands. We see that from reporters on the ground who study this stuff, and they don't have a stated goal in mind. There's nothing stated that could happen that would make them stop, right? So that indicates something. That indicates that this is about power and about getting their political wing into absolute control and power, and it's a scary thing.
I want to switch gears a little bit, Congressman, to the stimulus bill. The Senate GOP unveiled the coronavirus relief plan with 70% wage replacement and unemployment insurance. But it feels like we're miles away from actually coming to a bill. Do you think that, one, we need one? And two, if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, and I'm hesitant to comment on the Senate's version because it as they keep stating, as you just demonstrated, they're apparently miles away from coming to any conclusions. Listen, the unemployment issue has got to be fixed. More generous unemployment benefits, I think, are still okay given the gravity of our situation, but they can't exceed 100% of wages. We already created that problem, and we should learn from it. As people are trying to go, people want to go back to work, but they can't. They're disincentivized to do so, and businesses can't rehire. It's really hurting our economic recovery. Liability protection is important, but we can't give away too much to get it, because there's a lot of bad policy, anti-growth policies that could be lobbed into this that just make us spend more and tax my generation in the future in order to pay for it. And that's not necessarily the right answer either. We've got to also accept the fact that we haven't spent a lot of the money that we've already appropriated on a variety of accounts. So look at that too. So it's got to be pro-growth. It's got to be well targeted and to people who actually need it. And it's got to be based in smart pro-growth economic policies.
Congressman, you're there you represent Texas. There's a lot of talk in the media about how Texas could possibly be in play. Do you buy into that at all?
Yeah, I do. I don't think they turn it, but they're trying to trend it blue. It can be stopped. We've got some great candidates on new candidates, either trying to flip seats or trying to keep seats red. A lot of young women running, minorities running. Wesley Hunt, Tony Gonzalez looks like he's going to come out of that primary. Genevieve Collins, Beth Van Dyne. Troy Nels. There's a lot of great candidates that give us a new face to the party. And I think that's what people are looking for. Texas is still a center-right state. There's a reason that Texas works well. There's a reason that Elon Musk wants to move operations to Texas, because we do things that work. And I think people recognize that. People are fleeing liberal states to come to Texas, and we got to explain to them why it works so well.
Yeah, I think too often people see how well Texas is running, and all these folks in liberal states want to move there, and they're making a Texas more left-leaning. That's the problem. You're too good down there. Congressman, I want to wrap by just saying thank you for your service to this country. Thanks for your sacrifice to this country. We didn't get into it enough because the show's not long enough. But you talk about not having a plan B. You talk about your perseverance in becoming a SEAL and not letting that first time that an injury kept you from graduating in that first class. It's an inspiring book for anybody to read, not just about what's happening in culture, but what it takes to succeed. And there's one thing in there that you talk about, like waking up and staying focused on, don't eat that extra cookie, go to the gym when you don't want to go. And every morning since I read the book, I thought, oh, what would Dan Crenshaw do right now? So Thank you for such a great book.
That's what the rest of that shame chapter is about. Feel a sense of shame when you do it. I
know, and you shamed me. You hit my Catholic guilt, Congressman. Now I can't get out of. I have to get out of bed and go running every morning because of you, and no cookies.
Sorry that to you.
All right, it's good to have you.
Newsmax TV is now America's fastest growing cable news channel. We give you the real news you need. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a thumbs up. If you like this video, share it with your friends. Newsmax TV streams live on YouTube for free. Newsmax TV, real news for real people.